Walking with Your Ghosts, submitted by Bridie S. This is a true ghost story submitted by a viewer like you. It was a busy semester. I was working on my master's degree at the University of Wales as an exchange student. My roommate convinced me to take some time off and go with her on a school field trip to Scotland. I really didn't feel I had time, but agreed, as I had Scottish heritage. The bus trip took us to a small town across the channel from Edinburgh. We visited the site of an ancient church where many notables were laid to rest. The tour guide went about the graveyard, pointing out interesting graves. He stopped in front of one that was strangely not as ornate as the others had been. "This grave has a very interesting story," he said. "You see, this man was born 10 years after his mother had died and was buried." The group looked confused. He went on, "Here, beside his grave, is his mother's tombstone. His mother, Margaret Erskine, had died as a young woman. Her family were devastated. Margaret, although lovely, had never found a man she felt fit to marry until she was 27 years old. She then met, fell in love with, and married a widower, a Mr. Erskine. She became a loving mother to her husband's young children. She died within the year of her joyous wedding. The family went to the church and buried their wife and daughter, then went home to grieve." "Excuse me," I interrupted. "I think I know what happens next." The tour group turned and stared at me. I continued. "At this point, the family went home to tea and a meal, when suddenly heard a knock at the door. The knock was a distinct one. Before the days of doorbells, each person had their personal knock. The rap that they heard at the door was that of the lady they had just laid in a grave, Margaret. When the servant nervously answered the door, there she stood, Margaret with dirt on her gown and her finger bleeding heavily. "I'm cold, let me in," she whispered and rushed in towards the fire. After some investigation, the family found out that the sexton of the church was not an honest man. Once the funeral was over and the family had left the church, he had returned to steal Margaret's wedding ring. He dug her up and, having difficulty removing the ring, decided to cut off her finger. The blade shocked the woman, who was not actually dead. Reviving her from her coma, she screamed in the sexton's face. She found herself lying in a coffin in a graveyard. She was cold and confused, so she started walking home. Margaret and Mr. Erskine had 2 sons after that. She lived to be 78 years old. The tour guide stared at me, aghast. "How did you know this story?" "I've heard it all my life. It's a family story passed down from generation to generation." I laughed. "My grandfather is an Erskine." I stood beside Margaret's grave until the group were asked to board the bus. How strange that I would be brought to this town I never heard of, and be guided directly to the grave of my ancestor. If you have a true ghost story you want to share with others, put it in the comments and you might find your tale featured on Walking with Your Ghosts.
Help us by liking us, subscribing to us, leave a comment.